Hey everybody, it is Thursday afternoon and it just occurred to me it's been quite a while since I've done an around the world update, and it also occurred to me why, and that is because the fish room is rather disheveled at the moment. My waterfall is shut down. I'm kind of working on a couple tanks. I got a few things going on, and frankly it is the middle of summer and my mind is elsewhere. I'm spending a lot of my time outdoors, my kayak, hiking around in the woods and that sort of thing, and so I haven't been spending a lot of time down here. And as a result, we got a bunch of stuff that's sort of hanging in stasis right now. And then I realized that that's kind of the point of these round the world updates, just so you can get an idea of what's actually going on in my fish room. It's not always as glamorous as you might think. So today we're actually going to have a look at what's going on real world in the fish tank in my everyday scenarios, which is not always the greatest. So here we go. First of all, the waterfall is shut down, so there's no need to really even have any of the lights turned on, but turning this light on just so we can get a look at it. I have decided I'm going to fix this one. I know the wood in the back and all that kind of stuff is moldy, but I'm not concerned about that. It's whatever. That's not going to be an issue for me as long as it doesn't leak. I'm not going to worry about it. I have bought some rubberized paint, and it is suggested from the company that makes the paint to use this. It's a landscaping fabric. It's a weed blocking type fabric, and they suggest it for connecting two pieces together if there's going to be movement between the two pieces. So I don't know if that's exactly the same, but you will still get a rubberized waterproof seal. The cloth just keeps it from ripping apart or coming apart where there's a seam. So I think I'm probably just going to sort of lay that stuff in as I paint the rubber in, and we're going to go from there and hope for the best. So it's probably going to be sort of a patchwork, mismatched job like I always do. But at the end of the day, I usually get it to work. I usually get all the stuff to stop leaking and so on and so forth. So with it as this emptied as it is and dried out, and I'm going to really strip it down and clean it up, and then we'll get this thing sort of up and going again. It's just a matter of when I feel like doing it. I'm not going to force myself to come down here and do it if I'm just not in the mood to do it. And so far, this just been kind of on the back burner for me. I'm not that concerned about it right now. And the reason I'm not that concerned about it is because this tank's fine. I set it up so that if the waterfall wasn't running, it would still have enough circulation. It's got a filter going on the side of it. There's water movement in the tank, and it's not that deep. So you get a fairly good amount of gas exchange even without a ton of circulation. So I'm not seeing any signs of the fish not getting enough oxygen or anything like that. So as far as I'm concerned, this tank is just fine the way it is. We'll get around to doing the waterfall when I feel like it. We got my foot tank here, and not much going on in there. You can barely really even see in there anymore without me having this big LED turned on. Let me turn that on for a moment. That is what lights my waterfall normally. That's this big light fixture there. It's been nice on my electricity bill not having to run that. That's kind of another reason. Plus that generates quite a bit of heat down here. So for this time of year, it's kind of been nice to not have that thing up and running all day. But that provides so much light that it actually lights up this foot tank all the way down here. And you can see same old, just, still some shrimp in there. There's still a few guppies in there. I've still got my cherry barb in there, and it just ticks over like a clock. I never do anything to that tank, and it just sits there functioning. So we're going to leave that well enough alone. Probably need to get in here and thin the plants out, do a little bit of maintenance on this tank, whatever. But again, that's about all we got going on in this tank. If anything, I'm going to have to start thinning those live bearers out, because I've noticed I am starting to get several of those blue wag platies are starting to breed in there, and they're surviving the predatory fish to the point where I'm going to have a lot of platies in this tank, a lot of live bearers in this tank. So moving on from that, we'll turn those lights off to reduce the amount of glare we've got going on. Coming around to my 29 miscellaneous. Nothing really going on in this tank. We're not going to spend much time here. My new angelfish, wherever it is, I'm sure it's in there somewhere. There it is, hiding up in the back corner. Can't see it through all the glare. There we go. Stunning angelfish. I'm really happy with the way this angelfish is turning out as it grows up and starts to color up and fill in a little bit. Absolutely beautiful. So I've already got the female guppy in this tank along with that male platinum guppy. Those are the two that bred in my quarantine tank before I had my disaster and killed them all. All of their offspring, all of the fry from these two guppies are now gone because of my ammonia spike. And of course that was my fault. You can watch those videos. But the angelfish in this tank looks great, and now we are going to probably start working some of my other female live bears into this tank. I might pull that male guppy out and make this into a sorority tank only. That way if any of the females, either the guppies or the platies, do drop any more babies when they're in the tank, between all of the tetras and the angelfish and everything, chances are I won't get overrun with fry. So that's about all that we've got going on in this tank. Otherwise, it just ticks over like a clock and nothing really to speak of. My 55-gallon Gourami tank, on the other hand, we do have plenty to speak of at the moment. I have finally begun really working on this tank. You know, or at least my regular viewers know, that I've got 3 out of the 8 Gouramis survived my disaster, and I will be getting some more Gouramis. I want to have a group of pearl Gouramis in this tank. I'm hoping that the angelfish being in there won't be an issue. I don't foresee it being a problem, but we'll see. The pearl Gourami seem to be pretty sensitive to any kind of, not necessarily aggression, but just any sort of boisterous activity. Like, I wouldn't try to put pearl Gouramis in a tank that had danios. They're just so frantic and busy all the time that would stress out those pearl Gouramis. So I'm hoping that the fish that are in this tank are not too I'll just say boisterous, you know, too aggressive in that sense, just too active, I guess you could say, to stress out the pearl Gouramis. And I'm hoping with a group of pearl Gouramis, they will find comfort in themselves and they'll stick together, and that will help their survivability. I've only ever bought 1 or 2 at a time rather than a large group, so I'm hoping that'll help. And once again, my Gourami tank will indeed be a Gourami tank, because right now there's no Gouramis in here at all anymore. They're all gone. So to get it ready, I've been cleaning it up. The cyanobacteria was coming back, and then of course I got this algae growing all over everything. My 2 ancient Siamese algae eaters that were in this tank have now died, and I've got no algae control in this tank at all. And so I'm going to get some more algae eaters. Again, in my tank that I just wiped out all those fish, I had 4 baby Siamese algae eaters. 2 of them were going to go in this tank, and now they're gone too. So again, I'm going to have to start from scratch. But before I do that, I got to get this tank cleaned up. So we did a big water change today. I physically removed as much crud and crap and growth and stuff out of there as I could, and now we're giving it a chemi-clean treatment. And we're going to stay on top of doing some water changes here over the next couple of days, hopefully. And we're going to get on top of getting it cleaned up and ready for some new fish to go in. In the meantime, my filter that was leaking it's just sitting there. I haven't touched it, haven't bothered it. It's still pumping plenty of water through it. It's still pulled a lot of the stuff out. I'm doing a treatment right now, so let's just let it go ahead and get dirty and fill up. As long as it's not leaking, I'm not going to worry about it. I do have a new O-ring to replace the O-ring that was in there that was leaking, but I don't think I need to. I think that the O-ring was only leaking because there was some crud or something in it. Once I opened it up, wiped it down and closed it again, I haven't had any leaks. And the only way it does leak is if I shake it vigorously, a few little drips of water come out of the side. And I don't think that's, you know, it ain't meant to be shaken vigorously. So as long as it just sits there, I haven't had a drop of water. But just to be on the safe side, I do still have it sitting in the pan, and I do still have it sitting out where I can see it. So, I mean, no sense in putting it in a pan and then putting it under the skirt. So, you know, my first sign that it was leaking would be when the pan overflowed and I had water on the floor. So I may as well leave it sitting there where I can see it. And that doesn't bother me. I know that might be really annoying to a lot of people to have a filter just sitting out in the middle of the floor like that, but honestly, it really doesn't bother me at all. I don't pay any attention to it. I come in and I look at the fish tanks and I don't pay any attention to that filter at all. So it can stay where it is. In the meantime, we're going to move on to my 55-gallon tank. We got some exciting changes coming up to this tank, but I'm not going to spoil that just yet. We're going to be shooting a video about that in the very near future. I will say I found some woodwork that we're going to put in this tank. So we're going to revamp it, we're going to rescape it, we're going to pull these plants out, we're going to get it cleaned up, we're going to put some new woodwork in it. We will have a video going out and collecting the woodwork. I know I recently started a new channel that's going to be all my outdoors videos and stuff, but I don't count videos where I'm going out collecting hardscape as an outdoors video. You know, we're going to start in here, we're going to talk about the tank, and then we're going to go out, collect the wood. I'm going to show you my process. You will get a little bit of outdoors, obviously, but then we'll be back here putting the wood back in the tank and so on and so forth. So look forward to that video coming up. I'm also going to shoot a video talking about collecting our own woodwork, putting live rock, putting live branches, leaf mulch, stuff like that. That's come up recently in a video I watched. So we're going to be talking about that and discussing the whole idea of the dangers and the possibilities and the benefits of using sort of pre-established stuff from your local streams and local lakes, rivers, etc. So look forward to all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, I've not yet got started on doing anything on this tank. I'm kind of, you know, I've already got fish sitting in the other room for this tank. So I need to kind of get working on getting this one cleaned up. The water's fine. It's just, you know, as usual, it's just overgrown and looking a little bit cruddy. So we'll get it cleaned up and that'll be fine. And then we'll start working on this one. This one probably needs a water change more than that one did. This one probably, if I tested the water right now for nitrate, it would probably be a very, very red vial. So that'll probably be my project this evening, will be to get in here and start working on my 55. 40-gallon tank. Nothing. I mean, you can see if you go back and look at the last time we did Around the World, if you look at the water level, you'll see how much it's dropped since then. And that is because I've done nothing to this tank other than sprinkle some food in there every day. Some days it's a pinch of flake food, and then about once every week or two, maybe, they'll get a couple of algae wafers. But all of the fish in this tank are either, I got 4 Siamese algae eaters, and then I have 2 rubber lip plecos. So they're all either off-walks scrapers or grazers, or they're algae eating type fish. And you can see there's lots and lots of growth and everything going on in this tank. Although I gotta say, once again, you know, less is more. Since I've started ignoring this tank, it's actually looking better than it has in a long time. And that is because I haven't done anything. I don't even remember the last time I did a water change on this tank. It's just been sitting there. You know, go back through my videos and you'll see every time I talk about this tank, for as far back as I can remember, I've just been saying, we'll get to this tank, we'll get to this tank, we'll get to this tank. But there, you know, I don't feel like this tank looks like it needs to be gotten to. You know, my other tank looks like it needs to be gotten to. This tank, you know, it needs a little bit of work. I could do a water change and clean up along the top of the glass and everything, but it's just, it looks like a little aquatic garden. It looks fine. And so there's just nothing pressing to me. I got so many other things going on or whatever. There's nothing urgent for me about getting to this tank. It might be next Christmas before we get around to doing something. If then, who knows? You know, I'll do it when I get to be in my bonnet to work on this tank. We'll work on this tank. So in the meantime, it's looking fine as far as I'm concerned. Moving on to my 125-gallon New World tank. Nothing really to talk about in here. The one thing I will say I have noticed is that my giant bushy water sprite that was growing up there in the middle, I know a lot of you did not like that, so this will probably make you happy. It's just dying off, and I believe the reason is all of my silver dollars down there. You'll notice you can see all the reflection of my waterfall tank. I was going to strip it down and take it apart, and that's what it looks like from behind. I used to have this black cloth hanging across all this stuff so that when you looked into the front of this tank, you didn't see all that reflection and glare of the back of the other tank. So anyway, there's Flo, my spotted tilapia, making a fuss as she makes her way through the tank. She fusses at everybody all the time for no reason at all. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just that cichlid personality. But you can see I do need to get in here and do a little bit of water change. The glass needs a wiping down. And back to what I was saying, the silver dollars I have in this tank just chew the roots up on that chunk of water sprite. For as big as that mass of water sprite was, that root mass should literally just be flowing in this tank. It should look like a you know, a maiden's hair or a stringy mop or something. And what we've got is that. And you can see all the bright white shoots. That's all the new shoots that are desperately trying to grow to get ahead of being munched down by all of those silver dollars. I get asked all the time, like, don't your silver dollars eat your plants? And the answer is yes, they do, but they only eat the plants that are yummy and tender. And that does not include Anubias, which probably is like trying to eat linoleum. I got lots of Anubias in there. And then I've got some Java Fern. Likewise, probably tough as nails. I do have some Java Fern that had some rough edges and was dying off a little bit, and you can see where all of the stuff that is dead has been removed and cleaned up. So it looks a little rough and scraggly, but at the same time, all we have is green living tissue in there. I don't have a lot of dead material, and that I believe is from my nearite snails. So good for them. They're keeping the tank nice and clean. And I actually just noticed how much of that green cyanobacteria I've got growing down on this end of the tank now. That stuff is the bane of my existence. I've struggled with cyanobacteria forever. It's just in all my tanks. It always will be. I long ago stopped caring about it, but it just makes me scratch my head how it just keeps popping up in all these different places. You can see where my big pleco in this tank keeps the wood scraped nice and clean, and in the really deeper grooves and depressions, you can see where the algae and the cyanobacteria sort of survive the scraping. But for the most part, that pleco does a really good job of keeping that wood in there nice and clean for me. So moving on, nothing to talk about with my snail tank. It's just a bunch of snails growing in there. We'll have a look real quick and see what my forest of Java moss filter looks like, because that's my only filtration right there. Is it flows through that Java moss and the water flows back into the tank. I do not care one way or the other about actual like biological filtration other than ammonia and stuff. The nitrate level in this tank is irrelevant to me. I don't care how high that gets. I just want to make sure that there's no ammonia, that's going to get in there and get to high enough levels that it would kill the fish. So we got water circulation, and that prevents it from stinking, and that's it. That's all I do, is I just make sure that there's enough water in there that I get circulation, and then I just throw a bunch of food in the tank, and then with excess food you get excess snail growth. And now I got plenty of snails to feed all my fish that like to feed on snails, and that includes the crayfish that are here in my 40-gallon native tank, although at the moment it looks like it's got a green curtain in front of it. And I think it's really interesting. You can actually see the pattern of beams of light, or the light rays coming down as they make their way through all of that duckweed. So probably don't need to tell you, but I need to get in this tank and do a little bit of work. Again, the water's fine. The nitrate level might be getting up there a little bit, but with all the green growth and the algae and all that duckweed, and I got water sprayed in there that's growing up and out of the tank in a couple different places. The nitrate level in this tank is probably not as high as you would think, considering it looks like a gross overgrown swamp, but nothing really going on in here. I put 3 crayfish in here. That's the last changes we've made to this tank. I did I'm going to say large, medium, and small, not respective to the overall species size, but respective to each other. I put 3 of them in there. The largest one was maybe 3 inches, and then the smallest one was maybe 3/4 of an inch. It was a really little one, and I've not seen that one since it went in the tank. And that was small enough that I'm afraid that the little sunfish that's in this tank might have been able to eat it. The sunfish is still looking good, looking healthy, but I don't have a lot of color in it. I did get a video from one of my viewers. They emailed me. They saw a sunfish in a restaurant that had beautiful color to it, and suggested that maybe my feeding habits, my diet, is not what's causing the sunfish to lose all their color. Speaking of which, there's the sunfish right now, if you can see through the glare. So it's getting pretty big. It's growing. And that would definitely be big enough to, if not eat that little crayfish in one gulp, it would definitely be big enough to like tear its legs off and peck at it and eventually make a snack out of that little crayfish. So not saying that happened. It still could be in there. It's a tiny little crayfish, and there's tons of places for it to hide in this tank. So we'll see. It may be still alive. The other 2 I know are still in there. As of last night, I saw both of them out at the same time. So those 2 are still in there and doing well. So we'll get this tank cleaned up, and we'll do some more video on that and get caught up on that one here pretty soon. Moving on to my 125-gallon tank. Normally, when we sort of fade in from this end of the tank, you are seeing a giant mass of green. But today you're actually seeing a big rock. I collected that rock up at Graves Run, and I loved it. It was almost like tombstone shaped, and I tossed it to get it from one place, you know, one side of the stream to the other, and it landed on this corner and broke that whole chunk off. And I know the average viewer probably would never ever notice that or even think about that, but to this day I see that chunk and man, it looked so perfect until I broke that corner off on the process of bringing it home. And so now I got a broken rock in my tank. Anyway, not that really matters, but I always think about that every time I see that. What I did do was remove a huge amount of Java fern that was growing right there. The video I shot recently about all that Java fern I had for sale, that's where a lot of it came from, was right there. And you can see the roots growing into the woodwork and everything, wound up leaving chunks of it behind. I mean, it's growing down into it to the point where this is Java fern here, that's Java fern, all this stuff. That stuff back there is Java fern. And then even this piece right here, I just realized that Java fern got left on this big piece of wood that goes down this whole end of the tank. And then so that is Anubias that nobody was ever able to see because all that Java was in the way. So that opened it up. It let a lot of light in. It let a lot of water circulate. And when we come back here to a more respectable distance, we can see the whole tank. Let me move my tripod out of the way. You can see how much more open and bright. It definitely looks good. I still like having this nice big thick mass right here, but that is kind of reducing water flow. I may get in there and thin that one out just a little bit at some point in the future. I don't know. But I did a series of water changes over the last few days. I removed a ton of mulm. We got the filter all cleaned out and up and running again. I got the glass wiped down. And again, with the water changes and everything, I got the nitrate level down to in the orange. You know, it's probably still 30 parts per million, but at least it's in the orange now and not way up where it was, because it had been a little while since I'd done any maintenance on this tank either. Definitely been slacking on my fish room duties down here while it's been nice weather. Again, middle of summer, I've been out on the water, you know, rather than down here changing water. So other than that, not a lot going on. No new fish or anything. Oh, my Synodontis Catfish that I put in this tank is still alive. I have seen it, and it still hides under rocks and stuff, but it is still in there. My rainbow shark is no longer bothering the Siamese algae eaters. I've got 2 of them in this tank, and they're doing fine. They're not being bothered by that shark anymore. That was a fairly short-lived thing. The lavender gourami that my friend gave me, she's still doing fine, looking good, and she actually pals around with my big snakeskin gourami quite often. They'll be very close together and actually swimming almost side by side. That lavender gourami also hangs out with my tenopoma, which you can see down here. Not a gourami, but closely related to a gourami, and some people, one of the common names for that is actually a bush gourami or a spotted leopard gourami. It's not actually a gourami though, but the lavender gourami, which is now hiding behind my big snakeskin gourami there, often tries to sort of pal around with both of them. So I'm really, really happy with that lavender gourami that my neighbor gave me. He was having trouble with it in his tank. She was being really aggressive to all the other fish in her tank. And now that she's in here, she's just as docile as can be, and she's beautiful and healthy. And so that was a good move. I'm really glad I got her, because he was at his wit's end. He didn't know what to do about it. So that's all I can think of that's going on in my 125. This is actually my best looking tank at the moment. I feel like we should linger on this one for a little while just because it actually looks good. I just did a bunch of work on this one yesterday and got it looking like this. Moving on to my 20-gallon tank. This one is still in the process of cycling in. We are going to talk about that, so I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail right now, but I am in the process of cycling it. I've done some experiments with rapid cycling. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to sum up my thoughts on rapid cycling and whatnot. I also put some live rock in there, back to that topic. We collected these out at the stream, sort of spur of the moment on the way home one day. I grabbed them, threw them in the tank. Part of what we're going to talk about is the impact it had on the nitrogen cycle, because they were live rock that that I pulled right out of a stream, brought home and put directly into the tank. And the other thing we're going to talk about is how much, if any, parasites, snails, and other things did I bring home and introduce into this tank once I put rocks fresh from the stream right into my aquarium. So we'll be talking about that in the near future. I always have more videos to shoot than I have time to shoot. Or I should say I want to shoot more videos than I have time to shoot. This is my full-time quarantine tank. My temporary quarantine tank's in the other room. We're not going to see that in this video. Just a bunch of red wag platies in here. I've talked to a couple people. I know my neighbor wants some. He's on vacation right now, and I'm waiting for him to get back, so he's going to get several of these. And I've already talked to the owner down at House of Tropicals, and he said just bring them on down. He'll take them off my hands, give me a few bucks, whatever. Just, you know, especially these. These are actually red wag platies, and he can sell them as such. The other ones, the guppies that are no longer with us, the ones that I killed, he was going to take too, but they were pretty much just going to be random live bearers since we weren't able to identify them positively as any type of guppy. But these are technically, officially red wag platies, so he can actually sell them as such, and I'll get a few bucks for them. So, you know, maybe he'll go towards my purchase, whatever I get next time we're down there. Moving on to what I am less and less thinking of, my brackish tank. I was thinking about that this morning as I was looking at my bucket of instant ocean in the other room. And I think it's about time, the next time we do a water change on this tank, I'm probably going to have to add some salt. I added some salt last time. I did a pretty big water change. I pulled 10 gallons out, and if I just filled it up completely with fresh water, we would have taken it way below brackish. And I have found through some experiments over time that my figure 8 puffer in there seems to do best when the water is not quite brackish, but it definitely wants some mineral salts in the water, some sort of, you know, marine salts in the water. So keeping it around 1.002, 1.003 seems to be what works really well for keeping my puffer nice and healthy. And so I do still have to add some salts to the tank, and that's not aquarium salt. That is actually marine salts, as though I were making it up into, you know, a saltwater tank. I just don't add as much. I don't make it as salty as a saltwater tank. We stop at 1.002 or 1.003, and you can see how nice and bright white my puffer's belly is, and all those weird white lesions he used to have all over him are pretty much cleared up and gone. So everything's looking good in here. I do suspect that I have a breeding problem with my guppies in here. I kind of thought that the puffer might keep some of the fry in check, but I am beginning to suspect that is not the case. And I might have to get in there and scoop some fry or something out. So, got a few guppies swimming around in there too. Guppies are definitely the fish that keep on giving. If you want to get some free fish, buy one female guppy and one male guppy, and you will have all the fish you want for the rest of your life, provided all the fish you want are all guppies. All the live bears are like that. You can get the platies, the mollies, any of them. You put a male and a female together, and you'll have more fish than you know what to do with in no time flat. So there you go, everybody. That was a nice short one. Kept it under 30 minutes. Kept it under 29 minutes even. So we are back to the 29-gallon miscellaneous. I am going to say thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget to check out my new channel. I will put a link down below. It is going to be all of my miscellaneous stuff, my outdoors, hiking, kayaking, fishing, product reviews, all the different little gadgets I like, so on and so forth. So go over there, check it out. Make sure you're subscribed. And I would appreciate if you subscribed, even if you're not planning on watching any of the videos. I just need to get that subscriber number up so I can feed YouTube's algorithm. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed to my other channel. And I'll see you real soon in the next one.